Welcome to Adeptus On-Air, the show where we examine how individuals and companies make decisions that drive their business and personal success. Each week, we connect with notable professionals who pull back the curtain on the industries that Adeptus has been on the cutting edge of for the last 30 years, including music, sports, and entertainment, as well as new emerging markets.
Good morning and welcome to Adeptus On-Air. I'm your host, Evan Eneman, and we are joined today with Jaimie Beebe. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So Jaimie, why don't you give us a little bit of background on your experience, what you're doing now, and we'll jump into the conversation.
Sure. I am a casting director. I cast both scripted and unscripted. I also have two podcasts. One is about stalkers, and the other one is a blend of true crime and travel. So they're both in the true crime genre. And I also own a bikini company, and I'm working on about 45 other things.
You keep yourself very busy, it seems like.
I do.
And
Life is
how,
short. You got to do everything you can.
that is true. That is true. Follow your passion and work hard. What would you say was your path to getting into the entertainment industry and working with talent as a casting director?
It was a very roundabout way. I have a bachelor's degree in photography and a master's degree in music management. And so I came out to LA to manage bands. I was actually going to manage like my ex-boyfriend's band, and he's going to be like a big rock star, and I was going to follow him around on tour. He's a chiropractor now. I think he's still in a band somewhere. We're great friends, but it didn't work out for either of us on that front. And so I met somebody who was like a child actor, and he's all, I'm going to be a director and start this company. Like, you can run the company. I was like, okay, cool. That's great. I've never even been on a set. Thankfully, there's Google. So I kind of learned as much as I could off Google. And then I did manage the company, and it went pretty well for a number of years. I hired the right people, luckily. And in doing, not a lot of people, because we were not a big company, but I hired people that knew what they were doing, and I kind of learned from them. And I try to learn all the jobs to see, because I don't want to be the manager of anybody. So I was like, well, there's got to be a better job in here for me. And in kind of learning all the jobs and how everything worked, I discovered that casting was definitely my way to go. Everybody likes the casting director. Everyone's nice to the casting director. Like, that's just the job I want. Like, I want that like easygoing, no one's gonna be mad or yell at me or any of that kind of stuff.
I mean, everyone wants to get booked on a job, right? So that's an easy. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's kind of how I fell into it, and I love it. I was actually surprised at how easy I thought it was, both scripted and unscripted. I was like, this is a blast. Like, this is great. And then I would talk to like other people in the industry, and they're like, oh, I would never want to be a casting director. I'm like, what? It's the best. So, that's how I decided that it was probably the right route for me because I loved it.
What have you ever run into challenges where you have casted someone that just hasn't worked, and then ultimately you do have some sort of headbutting, if you will?
Um, yes and no. I mean, when someone is cast, they have contracts and everything else, so they kind of have to work out unless they like really screw up. There's definitely people. I have a list of people that I don't work with, just because they've done things that they shouldn't or whatever. But overall, like, things have a tendency to work out. I'm pretty careful on who I put forward in things, and I like to know who I'm putting in something, because it's also like a reflection of me. Like, if I'm like, oh, I think this person is the best actor, this is great, I'll usually call somebody else they've worked with ahead of time, just to make sure, like, personality wise, they're gonna flow with the set.
What's your general process? I'm curious. I've not worked with a casting director before, but I've worked in entertainment and music. Is there a process that you use to make that? I mean, you're a matchmaker, right? You have to look at a
Kinda,
script, you have to
yeah.
talk to the director, and then you have to find who's going to be the right fit. Are there things that you do to help you do that?
I mean, sure. Like, it really kind of, I'll look at what people have done before and who they've worked with, and I will call other producers, other act like, so they everyone has worked with somebody that I know. Like LA is a pretty small town, and so I'm usually able to find out just kind of like their personality. I also look at social media. It's important that they're not posting things that would be really controversial. Some controversy is great, and stand by your boundaries and your lines and your morals for sure, but that extra mile of weird controversial stuff that doesn't need to be on social media, because that's not what you want to be known for. I'll just kind of do an overall check, like almost what I would do like on the dating scene, like just kind of a quick background, like who is this person. I think that's really important. I think people have to have their brand, on par.
Yeah, it's got to be a challenge going now and having to go through all those different channels on social media and doing that background check. It's there's a lot out there that people don't realize might be out there and could hurt them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is so when you work on a project as a casting director, do you get involved in any other way with that project, or is it purely as the casting director for the production?
It depends on the project. Sometimes, I'll do some producing, get a producer credit in there, which is great. I love that. But yeah, it just really depends on the project. Sometimes it's just a quick cut and dry casting thing, and sometimes it's a lot more involved.
Okay. And so you're a casting director, but now you're also a personality, right? You're an on-air personality. You have two podcasts that keeps you very
Yeah.
busy. What was the shift from being a casting director to also being a host on two different podcasts?
I mean, a lot of it kind of had to do with COVID and the entertainment industry shutting down. That's when I launched my first podcast. But I am not like the on camera person. I'm just not. Like, I'm not that great at it. It's a weird feeling. And same thing with doing the podcast. I have so much anxiety about it. Even my new podcast, I literally sit in my closet and record it by myself. And I'm just like, so I have so much anxiety about it. I'm like, people are gonna hate this. Oh my God. Um, but I'm able to like push that out of the way. It's not anything that I ever really saw for me, being in front of anything. But I love it. I love it. I feel like I'm doing a lot of good with my podcast.
So you found a natural opportunity during COVID because no one could go anywhere. You couldn't have any productions, and that was this audio and video format of podcasting. But
Yeah.
yet you're saying you still have anxiety about being the on air personality, or more just
Yeah, totally. Totally. Because, have you ever read like reviews are mean.
oh
Like,
yeah, people are brutal. People are really
oh,
brutal.
and sometimes it has nothing to like. I got a bad review the other day because somebody didn't like the color of the writing for my podcast graphics. They gave me a 1-star review. I was like, I just picked it. It
Yeah,
was the free color on the Canva thing. Like, I don't know.
a lot of people feel if they can't say something that's positive, they at least need to say something, and therefore they're going to try and knock you down because they're
It's
not doing it.
crazy. And I try not to like take those things seriously and look at them. Like I'm keeping the color. It's literally the free color from Canva, and I don't want to pay more for another color. Um but yeah, those kinds of things get to you sometimes, even if it's not anything to do, you know. And when I started my second podcast, you know, I started reading through the old reviews from my first one, like how can I make things better? And I was like, oh my God, these people hate me. Like,
Hmm.
what am I doing starting another podcast? But yeah, that's kind of where the anxiety comes from. But I
You
do just
push.
I brush it off. I wipe it away.
Yeah, is that something that you do? Do you have any sort of routine as you're going in to record? Any mantras, any sayings? So obviously that anxiety is telling you all these things. Do you have
Oh.
anything to calm yourself down before you get into production?
Um, no, I just do it.
Right.
I'm very like, I like getting stuff done. Like, I have these lists that I have so many lists. I have like the big list and then like the medium list and then like the small list and the hourly list. Like I have all these lists. And I love just crossing things off. So as soon as I can get things done, like that's kind of my way to do things.
Okay. You stay focused because if it's on your list, going through and getting the production out and completed is a task for you to get done as well.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
Very cool. So how did you get to true crime podcasts? I mean, it's a huge
I
genre.
love it. I
Yeah.
love true crime. You know, when I started the first one, I called my business partner because my co-host Jake Deptula, and I was like complaining. You know, I was like, I want to do a podcast. Like everyone's already doing all the murders. Like all the murders have been done. Like I don't know any murders that are not in a podcast at this point. And you know, and I came at it in a very superficial way, actually, which is interesting. And he was like, well, no one's doing a podcast about stalking. Like, let's do that. And I was like, I don't know anything about stalking. Like, that's crazy. And then I started researching stalking, and I was like, wow, there's this whole crime that I don't know anything about. Like, why aren't people talking about this? Why isn't this being taken seriously? Um, and then, you know, coming from such like a superficial level, like, oh, I want to do these murder podcasts, to now, you know, we're trying to change laws and we're trying to help people and get resources going, get people talking about this, you know, crime that is somehow shamed upon when it's victims. You know, it's really sad that it's treated like that. So it just kind of turned into this whole other thing. And then, you know, with my second podcast, I wanted to do something more that was like just me personal. And I travel constantly, and whenever I travel, I'm always looking at crime stats, like, am I going to be safe in this country, in this city? And I started searching, like, oh, missing people that were on vacation, and that's what the second podcast is about, is the missing and murdered that were on vacation. Like, how did it happen? Like, where, you know, how can we help their families either find them or get justice?
Was this something that you grew up watching Dateline or things of that nature? Are these things that,
Totally.
yeah? Okay.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and I always found it interesting because it's always been a lot easier to research like the serial killer. You know, we know all the serial killer names, but like, who are their victims? You know, most people can't name a single victim of like Ted Bundy or, you know, anybody, like even Jeffrey Dahmer, or any of those people, any of the big serial killers out there. Who are their victims? So
Yeah.
I'd rather give that voice over to victims or survivors.
And so the podcast, you have a couple hundred episodes now. It's been running for
Yeah.
a while. Have you found that the guests who are survivors of stalking, and obviously it's definitely a very clear crime that has a victim and has very long-tailed psychological implications for the survivor of that. Do you find they have some form of solace or relief or comfort in coming on the show and sharing their story?
Yeah, because, you know, stalking is such a weird crime. You know, it's a weird thing to deal with. People don't take it seriously. A lot of times when it really should be taken seriously, you know, stalking is oftentimes murder in slow motion, which is crazy. Like you're being hunted by somebody. And they're not taken seriously. Police don't take them seriously. Their friends are like, oh, just block that person on Instagram. It's not that easy. And so yeah, like once they are able to like get their story out and share that and be believed, and you know, that acknowledgement and that understanding, you know, because my partner and I have been doing this for years now, and like, 4 years 4 years now. You know, we talk to hundreds and hundreds of people, and so we get it. We know that like that actually did happen to you, whether you actually have it on camera or not. It's a pattern that you have to show, and we understand, you know, the terror, the fear, the PTSD from it. You know, that stalkers don't just stop. Like it's a really crazy thing. So I think, you know, that feeling of being finally believed and also just getting it off your chest, I think is really helpful for people.
Yeah, and you said you're also taking some action, talking about getting some laws changed. Or so, how do you advocate on behalf of survivors or victims of stalking? What are you doing on the legal side?
Yeah, so what we're really trying to do on an overall basis is like get those resources out to people. A lot of people don't know where to turn. Like, do you call 911 because your ex-boyfriend left flowers on your door? Like, what's the 911 lady gonna say, you know? But there is a way to do this and to deal with this. It's just a whole different type of crime. And, you know, even how when cops like do come out or something, you know, cops are made to come to a crime that's either happening or has happened and then find the perpetrator. With stalking, like, you know who it is oftentimes. But they've done all these things that, like, is it a crime? Kind of, yes and no. And so you have to formulate it and do a lot of work in order to get cops to be like, oh, okay, here's all these crimes. I can go get this person now. So we're trying to educate, you know, the legal system a little bit on how to deal with this, because a lot of times cops just don't know because they're not trained. They haven't been trained. So it, you know, it has a lot to do with training and you know, the way that is stalking a crime. How do you prove that it's stalking? You know, there's a lot of that in there too.
Yeah, versus just a bad interaction with a significant other or a former
Right.
significant other. And yeah, that must be a really difficult situation, both for the victim and for law enforcement and those who are trying to support them, because sometimes it might seem like just a story. You had a bad experience, therefore it wasn't good. But it sounds like what you're talking about is repetitive, traumatizing experiences for the victims and the guests that you have on your show.
Totally. I mean, it's when, you know, one person wants to instill fear in another.
Yeah, well, that's great work that you guys are doing that and shedding a light on it, both for the stories and for others who might have been scared of sharing their story. And I think that's um, something that people need to hear to feel more confident to speak up. And the more they speak up,
Yeah.
the unified
It,
voice.
It is really hard to speak up. I mean, a lot of our guests come on anonymously for safety because stalkers don't just stop one
They don't.
day. You know,
Yeah.
they will continue on, many of them will continue until they either die, go to prison, or find somebody new to stalk. And then even if they find somebody new, it's a good chance they'll be back, which is
Yeah, and we
terrifying.
only hear about when there's a celebrity stalker. We hear about those
Hmm.
stories, but to your point, we don't hear about the everyday person who is someone's mother, sister, daughter, whoever it may be, who's
Yeah.
going through this. So, so you have these two podcasts, and you know these podcasts themselves are great because they're shedding light on these really difficult topics, but they're a business, and you know these are things that it sounds like you're very interested in because you also have another business. You have an apparel business.
I
Talk to me a
do.
little bit about how you think about the podcast as a business and the goal of that for you guys. Is it to keep growing the audience? Is it for you to grow multiple different podcasts? What are you looking to do with your production side of that?
You know, I mean, definitely podcasting is a business. And we're really lucky that we're able to pay for some of our time that we put into the podcast through ads and things. Um, but I think even if it wasn't like, especially, you know, we'd still do it. Like we do truly feel like we're making a difference. But I do look at it as a business. It's important that, you know, we have a brand, like a name that we're proud of, and, you know, we're doing things in our personal lives and everything that we're proud of, which quite honestly I struggle with in a way. I mean, I like you said, I also have a bikini company, so like my social media is me in a bikini, you know, me doing what I want, me traveling. And so how does that look for like these survivors and these victims, you know, that are on the podcast? And so,
Sure.
you know, I had to think a lot about that. So the whole, as a whole, like I am a business, you know, so everything that people look at is out there. Um, but the way that I kind of combated that is like, you know, with the bikini business, I give a portion of the proceeds to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And I started the bikini business because I was in, you know, an abusive relationship. So it kind of came full circle. And then a lot of the people that we talked to on Strictly Stalking have been in abusive relationships. So It's interesting how it all everything that I've done kind of ties together, even though it's hard to see, it actually does. And so I feel personally that everything I do is part of my business because I am my own brand.
Sure. And do you find that you're sort of taking back that voice and that power and that ability to do what you want to do, talking about traveling alone, talking about an apparel, a bikini business, and then obviously these podcasts. Is that something for you that you've kind of looked at within your business structure and your career goals, is to own your own voice? You said we don't have a lot of time. We have to do everything we want now. Is that a part of it?
Yeah. My yeah, I ended that relationship, the abusive relationship, right before COVID, right before I launched my podcast.
Yeah.
Um, and it was a tumultuous time in my life, in the world. I mean, the whole world shut down. Everything was crazy. And what I did, I sat down and I made a list because I love lists of like 1,000 things I've never done. I mean, it was like from big things to little things. Like I had never been in a pie eating contest.
Yeah.
I've never swam with sharks. I never jumped out of a plane. And so I didn't, I didn't have a bikini company. All these things like random, like anything that crossed my mind for like a week, I would write it down. Um, and then I just started going through the list doing them. And I lost the pie eating contest. I have to
But you went through, so that's
I
great.
did it. I did it. And it's a lot of just like random, like I was talking to my friend the other day about my giant list of things I haven't accomplished yet in life. And a lot of it is like little random things, but I think it's important to have like big things and little things. I did jump out of a plane. I plan on swimming with sharks this year. Like, and it doesn't have, some things are like, you know, more personal, and some things are more like, see the world. Um, and so everything that I do kind of stems from that. Like, I don't want to say no to opportunities. I ate a tarantula in Mexico. Like, did I want to? Probably not, but it's not going to hurt me. I might as well try it. All that kind of stuff. Like I just think like life is so short and I want to do everything. I wrote a children's book. I don't even have children. I wrote and published a children's book. It's probably not for children to be honest. That's what my friends with children said, but it's still,
Well, it's a book for
dog.
people who are friends with kids. Then it's not a children's book
It's
as a
more an
parent.
adult book. My hairdresser bought one and she said that everybody gets a good laugh and loves it.
Well,
So
that's a big part of what you're doing.
but it was
So,
on my list. So it's like I just want to do it all and try it all.
and talk to me about organization, because you have a lot of things going on, and you talk about your list. Is this how you organize what you're trying to accomplish in your business? Do you have separate lists for each individual business? How do you organize yourself with everything going on?
I do. I'm super, super organized. I love organization. So everything is on spreadsheets. Everything. My whole life is on like all these spreadsheets and spreadsheets that link to other spreadsheets. So yeah, like I have like the main spreadsheet for each like thing I'm doing at the moment, like each business or idea of a business, because I've got 40 of those too, that I'm working on. And so everything is just super organized into spreadsheets and lists of like what I'm doing each day and, deadlines and what has to happen and my calendar. And I love working. It doesn't feel like I'm working when I'm working because I'm just, doing my own things and I can work when I travel and I can do everything from anywhere as long as I have internet. So yeah, I'm super organized. I think it's the most important thing or I'd be lost.
So tell me a little bit more about the bikini business. It's not easy to start any new business. It's not easy to start a podcast, but that can spread a little bit easier because there's not a huge barrier to entry for someone to download and listen to something. But with an apparel company, there's a lot of barriers, right? There's price point,
Yeah.
fit, there's color, there's style, there's how do you get to your customers, all these decisions you have to make. So how did you go about starting that business, and how is that going for you?
I think sometimes when I start things that I don't know about, I I'm able to think outside the box maybe more than other people because when I don't know about something, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just try this. Or like, yeah, I'll just, when I first moved to LA, I would walk into, record labels and be like, hey, have you guys heard my boyfriend's CD? Like, it was many years ago. It might have been a tape. But um, but people don't really do that. Or like when I wanted to move in my casting career from unscripted to scripted, I stood outside the universities and asked the students if I could cast their movies and whatever they were working on, because guess what, they're gonna graduate and they're gonna continue working and they're gonna hire me, and that's what happened. So I think just like that thinking outside of the box thing is how I kind of run with my life. And that's what I did, with the bikini company. I didn't really know, I still don't know anything too much about it. I wanted to just choose a bikini that I wanted. I own I own hundreds of bikinis from like other companies and stuff from traveling and whatever. And I would always be like, okay, this top fits and this bottom doesn't fit and whatever. So I made one that I like, that I think could fit like most people and I think would like basically look good. That's the correct way to do that. My body is not the same as everybody's body. But I think just moving forward and just trying it is the best way to go. And I love hiring people that know what they're doing. So I got a girl out of France who helped me with the pattern and everything like that. And then I got a manufacturer out of Bali who does all the manufacturing, and they're so cool. And I just try and sell them online, and I think it's going pretty well. I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, and I want to be able to give back to women, and I'd love to see the company grow a little bit, so that
Mhm.
my ultimate goal, I think, with the bikini company is to women that are coming out of shelters have a really hard time getting on their feet, and they often go back to their abusers. I'd like to be able to be like, hey, here's an internet, business that, you can sell bikinis online. You're not going to make $1 million from it, but like kind of get you off your feet. Hopefully, maybe, will it teach you how to like sell online, which is a great business if you can, yeah, it might teach you something. So, my ultimate goal with the bikini company is really just to kind of help other people, and you can wear that bikini, be confident, do your things.
So for you, that's
um
something that you want to see grow organically and see if it can, grow enough so you can actually help more people that you're going to give back to.
yeah, I would love that. I would love to be able to give opportunities to, especially women that are trying to leave an abusive situation, because it's hard. It's really
Yeah.
hard.
Any lessons learned from going through that process? Obviously, when you don't know something about a business you're starting, I feel very similar to you, that you don't have any preconceived notion of what you have to do. You can do
Yeah.
anything you want because you hadn't done it before. You don't know what works or doesn't work, and even if you did, that might not work now. Which is kind of a nice freeing thing. You don't have to do what someone else says you have to do. But do you have any lessons learned from starting that business?
Oh yeah. I learned a lot about women's bodies. Who knew? Yeah, I get sometimes I get reviews on my bikini company that like, oh well, you don't have this color, or you only have a two piece, you don't have a one piece, or like, what about this material, or this. Like, I'm not a huge company. Like, I just have literally one basic style with a few different colors. And so I learned that, like, really, like, my takeaway from everything I've done is like, you can't make everybody happy. And while you can't make everybody happy, you can just be kind and keep going. Like, that's kind of, was that your question? That's kind of my
Yeah,
takeaway
no,
on life.
that's a huge takeaway. Yeah, not just in business and life. It sounds like for you and the business, it's find the niche of people that like the design, like the colors, like the fit, and grow that. Which
Yeah.
there could be a huge audience. There could be millions of people that it's the right design, the right fit, the right color. Now it's just reaching those people to purchase them.
Well, whenever I try to do something, I'm like, it's usually something I personally like. Like, I love the bikinis I made. I like my podcast. I would listen to them if it wasn't me doing it. And so I'm not that unique. Like other people will probably like the same thing I like. Not everybody, but lots of people, hopefully.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I move forward with it. Like, would I want to see this, hear this, wear this? Then cool, that's how I'm gonna move forward. Because there's gotta be other people out there like me, right?
Yeah, of course, of course. At least some part of it. Um,
Right.
so what's next? I mean, you have a lot going on. You have your productions and your podcast and this bikini company. Is that what you're focused on now, or is there something else that you're really interested in and you're also going to start that was also be like a business?
Um, I would like to do a little bit more with traveling, but I haven't quite figured out what. Um, I mean, I'm really good at like travel itineraries and like I love it. And go see this at this time. And, um, I'd like to maybe do something with that since I do that anyway. I don't know what that would entail, but right now I just launched my new podcast, in late November. And so
Okay.
I'm working on growing that, and there's definitely more on the horizon. I've been working on a documentary that I'd like to one day figure out. It's a true crime documentary, and I've been working on that for like 10 years, so hopefully that'll come into fruition soon. And just casting and just doing everything else, and then fitting all my travels in is kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, and travel seems to be this essential sort of pillar for you because the most recent podcast is about travel and people who are on vacation, that murder mystery on vacation and everything else, and obviously with swimwear, that seems to be a core for you. What is it
It is.
travel that draws you?
I mean, everything. I love it. I love experiencing all the new, everything new. And so many cultures are amazing. And there's, I don't think you get enough watching or reading about it. Like once you go there and immerse yourself in another culture, your mind is so much more opened. Um, it's like I was talking to my mom the other day, and she has Parkinson's disease, and she's going through, America's medical care. And I'm like, hey, now that right now you're still able to travel, you're still able to do these things, like let's go to some other countries and see what they can do. Let's go to Southeast Asia. Let's go to these because there's so much out there in the world. And I think that that's just what really travel has opened my eyes to, is there's so much out there in the world, and we just know this tiny little portion of it, and to see it is beyond amazing.
What's been your favorite place to travel in the world?
Gosh, everywhere in Southeast Asia. I love Asia. And surprisingly, I loved Guatemala. I didn't. I don't know why it's surprising. I didn't know like that I was gonna go there and just absolutely fall in love with it there. It's gorgeous, and the people and the volcanoes. Oh, I love Guatemala. Um, and yeah, everywhere in Asia is just, I love it.
And is it the food, the people, the culture, just the immersive experience, is it, or is it that you're looking for something to bring back for one of your businesses or podcasts or projects? Is one driving the other, or is it the love of travel and meeting new people and seeing new things?
No, it's definitely the love of travel. It's not really, I don't really travel on a business type idea, I guess, to like come up with businesses or anything like that. It's more like what you can learn from people on a personal level. Um, Especially once you go to other countries. There's so many different beliefs out there, and every single one of them are valid. I think sometimes if you stay within a smaller confine, you forget what's really out there, and you forget all the people that are out there with like all these different beliefs, and it's all true. It's all valid, and it's all right. That, I mean, that's how I feel. Um After traveling, like there's so much less right and wrong in belief systems than you're taught, I think, as an American child. Trying to
Well,
say it the right way to not be like, I hate America, because I don't. But it's like, I think that, I think it's the teaching aspect of just being in another culture is amazing.
Yeah, there's no way to get that experience from a textbook or a
Right.
classroom or anything of that nature without a doubt. You do have to travel to that location, and it's the sights, it's the sounds, it's the smells, but it's all of them together. It's not any one of them. Or you can watch a movie and feel like you're in Bali, but you're not.
Yeah.
When you go
Exactly.
there, it's a very different experience, and I think that's an important thing to know. Even in the business context, you can sell something online, say it's something that it is or isn't, but then when someone gets it, it has to be all those things, because once they experience it, now it has to live up to what you told them, and not
Yeah.
dissimilar from what you have in production and scripted television and reality television and things of that nature. It's making it feel real, and travels the only way to actually do that is to make it real. So
Yeah, and what you see like media or TV or stuff like that, like that's all been filtered, you know? It's all been filtered and from somebody else. So like when I went to Bali, was it last time? One of the times I went to Bali, I visited this medicine man, the shaman, and I had this totally preconceived notion of what it was going to be like, and it wasn't anything like I thought. And it was amazing. It was awesome. Um, but it's like I was envisioning, like this TV scenario in my head, what I've seen on TV, and it's not really like that. I think and that's why it's important to go and see things for yourself and talk to people in other communities and in other cultures.
And then do you find it's important to also help share that story to normalize it for others who may not be able to go, who might have these same misconceptions?
Yeah, of course. And what I talk about, I know my other podcast, the last trip, it is true crime and travel, and I talk about the places I've been and the experiences that I've had. I think that's really important. I talk about cool things to see in that city or this city, and and how to stay safe, because not everywhere in the world is safe. I mean, I wouldn't walk down Hollywood Boulevard at night.
I was going to
I
say
would go
there's
to
many
Mexico. I would
places.
walk anywhere in Mexico at night, but I won't walk down my own neighborhood. And
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, wow, really?" Like, yeah, you know, for a number of reasons. Is everywhere in Mexico safe? No. Are there a lot of safe places? Yes, just like every other country. But being a tourist has sometimes advantages and sometimes disadvantages too. So there's a lot that I try to explain in my podcast. Like get in there and give lots of tips.
Yeah, it's very helpful on a lot of levels. I mean, certainly the fun part of it, go see this at this time and everything else, but also being self-aware and situationally aware. If you're walking down any street, be it Hollywood Boulevard or somewhere in Mexico City, you should be self-aware. You should know who's around you and what's going on. I mean, these are
Yeah.
basic personal safety tips, generally speaking. So
Yeah. They
that's
are.
that. Yeah.
But I
So
want to also like dispel like the misconceptions about certain countries too. People think a lot of countries are not safe, and they are. They're perfectly safe.
yeah, well, like you said, the filter that people have is not always the best filter for their purposes. So you're now sharing your own filter, right? When you're sharing your content,
Exactly.
your filters.
Exactly.
It's great to be able to do that. Is there anything else that you'd like to have, our audience, which are generally people that are in business, in the entertainment world or in the sports world, they're personalities, but they're also business owners and they have consumer brands, things of that nature. Is there anything else that you think would be helpful for our audience to hear about your experience with the podcasts or the bikini company or anything else?
I mean, I think my main thing for my main, I guess, like wiseness, or whatever, is like go for it. Just do it. Like you can totally fail and it's fine. And is it failing? Sure. Like I don't like the whole like every failure is a whatever, but I think it's great to fail. Like you never know. I mean, it could be great. You could come up with something else, but like if you don't do it, like you're literally just never gonna know. And there's so much time available. I mean, I'm sober. I don't really go out much, so I have a lot of extra time. But there's so much time available, and but it's on such a short string. So like everything you do every day, you should do something. Like whether it's something that makes you happy or you know but something like that kind of grounds you, something that you're moving forward with. I think it's just really important to live every day like it's the best day and it's the last day and it's the most wonderful day, you know?
That's a great piece of advice, and you shared something there that's interesting. Just because the month we're in dry January, and there are a lot
Yeah.
of people. I don't know your thoughts on dry January and this whole movement. I've been around it for about 5 years in the beverage space. Um, it actually gives people an outlet again who may want to participate socially but don't want to have the triggers around them, being alcohol and everything else. But how do you feel about these sort of sober curious or dry January movements?
You know, I have a lot of feelings about it, but I think it's interesting because, I've been sober for a little over a year now. When I decided to be sober, and it was mostly, I just didn't want to drink anymore. I felt like I was wasting my life, like being drunk, talking about dumb stuff. Um, and I had this huge group of friends I was always hanging out with. I was invited to all the parties. I was going to these places, dinners every night. And as soon as I stopped drinking, for like a couple weeks, I became the person that could like drive everybody everywhere. I was like, oh, okay. And then I became like the person like, oh, can you bring me soup? I'm hungover. And then I became the like, oh yeah, let's go hiking sometime. And I had to redo my whole social life. People stopped wanting to hang out with me because I wasn't drinking. I wasn't, partying and I think it was a reflection. Like they would be like, oh, like maybe I should do that, but I don't want to, or I'm not sure. But
They
it
almost
it was it was life changing.
yeah.
And it's a different life when you're sober. It really is, and it's one that I extremely appreciate. I'm very very happy. Um, so with this dry January thing, I see people posting like, "Oh, I'm sober, so but I'm just gonna do all the same things. I'm gonna go to the bar. It'll be fine." It's if you embrace that sober lifestyle, it's kind of shitty at the bar. It's not that fun. There's not much to do, and then you're just stuck with drunk people that smell and they're obnoxious.
That part's up.
Um, but are people that are like, oh, I'm just gonna stay home for a month and then I'll get back to it. Uh, that's not really the right way either. I would love to see more opportunities for sober things to do. And I do everything sober, obviously. But I go to a lot of concerts, I go to events. It's definitely a different life. Like I lost a lot of friends. Were they really my friends, as my dad likes to say?
Yeah.
Maybe not, but I hung out with them for a long time and I drank a long time with them. So I think people just don't tell you like being sober is amazing and I love it and I would never change it. Um, but it does come with some hard decisions and some hard questions that you have to face. And I think people don't really tell you that.
But have you found that it helps you in everything else you're doing in your life? Can you show up more? Can you be
Oh,
more,
yeah.
present in
Oh,
what?
yeah.
Yeah,
Like I look better, like completely. I feel better. I'm happier. I wake up happy. I wake up any time of day. Overall, like my life changed 110% to the better. Uh, totally. I have so much more time. I wouldn't have started the bikini company or the second podcast, if I was going out and drinking every night because that takes up, I'd be like, oh, happy hour, 5 o'clock. Well, so I'm going out from like 5 o'clock at night and then, till whenever I wake up at, I don't know, 10, 11, and then I'm gonna go back out at 5. Like, when am I working? Like, what am I doing in my
shortens
life?
your day.
Yeah,
Finger-
and look, maybe I overdid it and whatever, and other people can handle that, but I wish that I wish there was no alcohol in the world, to be honest. I think it ruins a lot of lives.
Yeah, it definitely ruins a lot of lives, and I can agree with you with that sentiment. That far less, if not none at all, would be far better for all of us. Well, it
That's
also
every bar out there hates me right now, but
there's a reality to it. That's all it is. Whether they hate you or not, you're just speaking your truth, and it's something
Yeah.
that has positively impacted your life, and you're going to share how it has, so others can have that same benefit. I mean, that's the goal
Yeah.
of having your podcast and having your company, is to put yourself out there in a way that you feel best represents you. So, and you've done an incredible job doing so. You've been very active, obviously, with your podcast. And so let's tell everyone where they can. So it's Strictly Stalking is the first podcast that you launched a couple years ago.
Yeah.
The Last Trip is the newest podcast.
Yeah.
And then your bikini company is the Boyfriend Bikini Company.
You got it. Got
Okay.
it all.
All right. And those are available on all streaming services for podcasts. Where can people listen to the podcast,
Yep.
and where can they find you?
Everywhere you listen to podcasts, if you just type in Strictly Stalking or The Last Trip, it comes right up.
Okay.
And on Instagram, my Instagram is feathergirl77.
Okay.
Strictly Stalking is Strictly Stalking Pod. The
Okay.
Boyfriend Bikini is the Boyfriend Bikini. And The Last Trip is The Last Trip Crime Pod.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It sounds like the lesson here is go out and do it.
Yeah,
Go
totally.
harness the moment, go do it, have fun, live, and enjoy. Well, I
Exactly.
appreciate your time. Yeah, I really appreciate your time, and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. If you have a question related to this episode or have a request for what you would like to hear, please email us at marketing@adeptuscpas.com. You can also find us at adeptuscpas.com online or follow us at Adeptus on social media. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.